Hi everybody, this is our midterm review for our residential construction technology course. So it's just going to be kind of an informal, quick overview and review of some of the things that we've done in the course so you can contextualize it and have a better idea how you should go about preparing for it. If you've watched all of the video lectures up to this point, and we're in the live lectures, you're off to a really good start. If you have missed a number of the video lectures, it's not too late, so you could catch up. I would just try to start now and spread it out between now and the test. And the test for our residential technology course will be on Monday, week 9, and let's just check the date on that just to make sure. So that's going to be on Monday, November 2nd. So that'll be when the test will be during your normal class time. And normally we start at 9, so this test won't be any different. We'll start at 9 o'clock, and you just have to the test will come live at 9 o'clock, just like you've been doing the quizzes. So it's the same kind of format in that way. And you'll see it'll say midterm test, and then you start. And it'll run kind of like the quizzes. You'll have, I think I'm going to give you 2 hours to do the test. There should be about 40 to 45 questions in the test. I can't tell you exactly how many will be on each area necessarily, because I'm going to create a pool of questions that get drawn from, so people might have different variations within that. But if I contextualize what's in the pool, you might get something like 10 to 15 questions from the Brook drawings, 3 to 5 questions on the rafter calculation of a common rafter. That sort of thing. And so that gives you an idea, but it just depends on how the pool pulls from it, the overall pool questions. So I might have 60 questions in the pool, and it'll pull maybe 40 out of those. So which 40? That's the way it goes. That's just to keep everybody honest, and everybody has a somewhat slightly different test. So the other thing is that it will be covering the chapters that we've been focusing in on, and we've and the lectures. So we've really covered chapters 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 of the Understanding Construction Drawings textbook. The Canadian wood frame house construction, I've been putting those as references to help you to better understand what's going on. If there's some holes from this book and it clarifies it in this book, then that's how I've been kind of utilizing that. But you can be pretty sure that if you really understood the chapters 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and a little bit of 10 is possible, but probably stuff that I've kind of mentioned in the other chapters. I'm not going to dive too deeply into the masonry and exterior finishes, but there could be something like you have to find something on the drawings, like a header course at the side of the windows, or a soldier course across the top, that sort of thing that's been mentioned in the lecture. So I'm not going to say 100% that those types of questions won't be there, but they won't be a big part of it. I think you can, as I said, that you'll have 10 to 15 questions that would be, and it could be in slightly more, but I doubt it, on interpreting the constructability that we've talked about from the Brook drawing. So I would use the Brook drawings again for those questions. So make sure you have access to the Brook drawings. I would try to write the test on, what you've been using, a computer or a laptop, as I think I may have mentioned in your other test review that I did. Don't be trying to write the test while you're driving along the 401 with your cell phone. That's not very smart. So you want to make sure that you've got somewhere that you're stable, you've got a good internet connection, and that you have your laptop on, or your computer, whatever device that you're using. I think it works best off a laptop or computer, but if you're really comfortable, you've got a really good iPad or something, maybe that's feasible. I would not take that as your first choice, but we have certain constraints we're dealing with. I understand that. That would be sort of how I would set myself up. We have the Brook drawings loaded. They also came with, if you got the paper copy of your textbook, you got the paper copy. I have the electronic copy loaded on Blackboard. You've done 2 quizzes that have questions on it by now, or you're just completing the 5th quiz on that. So you should be fairly comfortable accessing those drawings. I'm going to post, and by the time you see this, I should have posted the midterm practice test. And the midterm practice test is really just the quiz questions that I put in one sort of document that you can retry, like as a test. So it's like one long sort of test. And then at the very end is the answer. So if you scroll all the way to the end to the Word document, you'll see the answers. I would probably make sure that I've gone through the videos, I've read the book, and I feel fairly comfortable with the material before I would try the midterm review. And then the midterm review will help to point to where you need to focus your energies. If you've been really up to date with everything at this point and you want to do the midterm review right off, that probably could make some sense. But I think if you do it right off and you're just missing so many different things, then that might be more difficult for you. The other thing is get comfortable with the material and where I've mentioned things. It's entirely possible that I could have mentioned something in one of the videos, but it's not directly in the slides. Very often, as I think I mentioned in the other review that I did for the Intro to Construction course, I watched the videos myself and I remember, oh, that's a good question. Oh, that's a good question. But it may not exactly be spelled out in the slide. It maybe have to be interpreted, or you may have had to read it from the textbook. So all the sources are viable sources for test questions from that perspective. It is open book and open video and all that sort of thing. But again, you are constrained somewhat with time. So 40 questions is pretty easy to do in 2 hours if you know what you're doing. Pretty easy, I would say, really easy. But it's not enough time to start trying to learn stuff as you're doing the test. That won't work very well for you. So keep that in mind. So be well prepared. And so just going through a quick overview of some of the lectures, and just remember the 5C and the 6C lecture. Definitely the 6C lecture, that's reading off the Brook drawings and understanding constructability from that. And so is 5C. Make sure that you've gone through that. I see a lot of people have viewed 5C, so that looks like pretty good involvement on that. You probably want to make sure that you've done similar on 6C, and then you'll probably be if you're comfortable with those 2 video lectures and you're comfortable with the quiz 4 and quiz 5 that we had a lot of questions on that, then you're probably good shape for the drawing side of it. As well, you may want to look at the I think it's the 5 live lecture. Again, just maybe just in on the part that's on how to calculate the rafter length. So that part is, I think, pretty well done in the live lecture that we did on that, because I don't think that's really spelled out in my regular videos or in the textbook how to calculate. Well, it's kind of in the textbook, but I think it's done better in the live lecture. You guys had some good questions and you tried it. And I also posted the answers in the lecture slides on that as well. So I had a few extra ones and I posted the answers for that. Somebody requested that. So that's also under the lectures tab and the files loaded. So that's a good resource for that, because again, there will be a few questions likely that would come out of the pool on that. So you want to at least know how to calculate a ridge board and what the the ridge board deductions are. Like, so how to calculate a common rafter point length. If I've got 1.5 inch ridge board, how much would I deduct from that? Half the thickness of the ridge I would deduct back. These types of things. What's the minimum bearing for a common rafter? These kind of things. What's the minimum bearing for a floor joist? It's been repeated enough, so make sure that those are things that you understand fully. I think those things are pretty well in the chapters as well. So usually there's multiple points where you can gather the information from, but again, don't be fooled that, sometimes I spend, as you know, I spend 10 minutes on one slide. So reading that one slide is going to not tell you the whole story of something, right? So keep that in mind. We went through the first lecture, which was really all about the site plans. I won't have you read a site plan, so don't worry about actually reading a site plan. It's more about what it does and what the different types are and why we have them and the different components that we need to know in a site plan. So it's more along those lines, like understanding, site elevations that are provided, being able to reference from the edge of a location, those types of questions. I won't actually get into reading it, but you should have a good understanding of the visual aspects of the site plan, how it relates. But I won't be giving you a site plan to take measurements off of, at least not on this test. We also then, though, in the second part here, we did a lot on the actual zoning and building permits aspect and what's required and why and what a variance is and how we get our permits and sort of the process of thinking. So these are all opportunities for questions, to be sure. The types of building permits, when you need a building permit, all those are fair questions, right? And I think that was pretty much that area. So these are all things that could potentially be pulled upon for a test. Like you look at this and potential approvals, other areas where you require potential approvals before getting a permit. All right, I could have a list and I could say which of these is not an area where we need approval from. All right, so I could have this, and I could pick something that's kind of obscure but sounds kind of good, and then you would have to figure that out, right? These are easy things that I can come up with for questions, or I could even come up with a question of, just looking for it here, there's probably, I think there's, in the textbook for sure, there's a list of the things that you need to have when you're getting a permit. There's another one that you could easily pull a question out of. There is things like this. Permits are required when, right? So again, these are easy ones to pull up for possible questions in that. So again, too, if you put like little notes or page numbers of where key information is, it makes it faster for you to be able to find it. When you review material, it's not bad to think, oh, could he make an easy question out of this? You can, put yourself in the other person's shoes. He has to come up with a question. How easy is it for him to come up with a question about this? Oh, pretty easy. Okay, so then that's probably a good chance there'll be a question on it. So then we looked at, the rest we kind of looked at the structural elements of the house. So in the first half, we got through a fair bit. We got through the structural elements of a house. We went from the foundations, the footings, the foundation walls, right through the framing process, through the roof, right? So in the second half, we'll be getting into that's why I didn't put too much on the chapter 10 exterior finishes in this test, because that's kind of the next part is the exterior finishes, the interior finishes, all the building systems that are involved in residential construction and things like multi-unit structures, etc. So we get into that in the second half. In the first half, we're really looking at the sub and the superstructure, below grade and above grade. So that's our what we looked at in lecture 2A and 2B. And also this we had this schedule here, and it's kind of with your assignment too. You got to develop an overall schedule for a house just to get you an idea, and it kind of showed how the different chapters associate with different things. That gives you sort of a reference load of what we're doing. Speaking of loads, we also talked about the different types of loads. Those are easy for questions, to be sure. There's also details. I could have a detail in the questions if I wanted to, and I could have stuff, identify this or identify that. What is this? What is that? Those types of things. So we looked at that kind of information and the types of foundations through the substructure, types of foundations. Is it block? Is it reinforced concrete? ICF, insulated concrete forms. what we need around the foundation, where it goes, the weeping tile or drainage tile, window wells. This is an egress well so that somebody could get out of the basement, this particular example. That's why it's got like a ladder there. Preserved wood foundations, are these popular? What's very popular, what's not? These are easy questions to come up with, so potential. On the foundation, on the framing, we covered in 3 chapters, 7, 8, and 9 of the textbook, and then good references are in the CMHC on both the foundations and the framing. So if there's visual tools and cues you need more of, feel free to go to them. Also, just remember them too for your assignment. They may be helpful for you as well. So we looked at the different types of framing methods, espousing that platform / wood frame / 2x4, 2x6, or stick construction, Western construction, are all names that it goes by. I typically use platform, build a platform, put up the walls, build a platform, put up the walls. We did some comparing and contrast with lightweight structural steel, balloon framing. So you should know what these are, these different forms are. And we also said you can build like residential structures. You can use ICFs above ground. It's not just for below ground. Standard sizes of materials that are used, the grading stamps and what they basically say, from the mill where it's been milled to SPS, the species of wood, the association that is being utilized to grade the lumber, National Lumber Grading Association, kiln dried, heat treated, abbreviations of how the lumber has been done. Again, this is in the textbook that can be written out. We talked about moisture content. We spent in the live lecture a lot on the discussion. We did a couple of case studies with moisture content. We did one with sort of wood rotting. We did another one which was the houses that had the builder thought that it was more than 19% moisture content. Did a bunch of examples in that, and the live lecture links are there, but I won't likely pull direct questions from that, but maybe if you're not understanding some of this stuff too well, that can connect there to you to help you. We've talked about how wood is never straight. So these are all potential elements of questions for the tests. So that's our lecture 3 and our floor framing aspects, minimum bearing. It's open book, so I would expect you can find any of this stuff pretty easily. But again, you are a little bit restricted with the time frame, right? So you just got to make sure that you feel comfortable enough with the material when you actually see the question and you understand what it's talking about, and you can select the best answer under the circumstances. So that's lectures 3, and then there is 4, which deals with walls, similar types of things I can do with this. I did show a table here. Who knows? I could ask what's the composite snow load that would be used for designing lintels and roofs in Welland, and you might think, what's he talking about? And then you have this table if you know where to look for it, and then you could just look it up, right? Or I'd pick one where for sure I'm not covering it up. Same with maximum spans. Went through an example of that as well. So understanding that, being able to locate beam sizes, lintel sizes on a set of drawings. Those could be from the Brook questions, right? I could easily do that. Easy enough. And again, I explained those pretty well in 5C and 6C lectures. So all of these are potential points. So make sure that you're comfortable with this material. We did cover a lot in the time period that we've started, which is great. So you guys have been doing really good at trying to keep up with the material. That's excellent. OVE, optimum value engineering, and some of the aspects of that, the advantages, and then maybe why some things aren't used that much is also good information as well, because we talked about warm moving through to cold, thermal bridging, how easy it is to go. You reduce the amount of lumber in the wall, you reduce the amount of thermal bridging, ergo you make the effective R value of the wall, the true R value of the wall, higher, which is good. R value meaning resistance to heat loss. So another thing that we'll be covering after the break is the building envelope. So lectures 4 and the live lectures, and then we got into the roofs, right? So we got into the roofs, which was 5A, 5B, and 5C. So we got into roofs and the different types of roof, a cut roof, the different components, lots of terminology. And if you have trouble, go to this site as far as visualizing what's going on. Sometimes, you know what, if you can visualize it and see it laid out in front of you, oh, this makes a lot more sense now. Oh, or watch that first and then go through this. Oh, okay, I kind of know that. Or I need to go back and check what was he doing and does this make some sense? So that's helpful that way. We live in the day of that you can find information on the web. The biggest problem is finding decent information. It's not easy. It's not easy for me, and it's not easy for you either. So you got to be a little bit careful with what you are looking at. That's why I try to give, if I give a reference, it's one I feel is reasonably good for the purpose it serves. Because I can look up rafter layouts online. I can see some horror stories, but I can also see some really gifted people doing it well. So keep that in mind. Or keeping it simple too. That's the other thing. I can see some really sort of genius people coming up with all kinds of complicated ways to lay out a rafter when, why would you do that when it could be done much more simply? So keep to the KISS, keep it to KISS, keep it simple, stupid aspect. So these calculations are already predefined on something like a rafter framing square. So a framing square is what we call this, and it's a long tool that carpenters use. We only really got into the common length of rafters. So this 13, if you recall, is the hypotenuse of 5 and 12. If you don't know what I'm talking about with that, watch live lecture number 5 and you will get clarity on that, as well as the recorded lectures for 5A and 5B will be helpful. Difference between a rafter and a roof joist gets into that in our lecture. That's an easy question. So then, of course, roof trusses, which are the dominant way that we build roofs today, because it's quick, it's easy, it's inexpensive, it doesn't require as much skill in layout. But it's also complicated in the sense you can cause a disaster if you're not careful and you don't know what you're doing when you're installing roof trusses. So it's kind of this dichotomy that goes on. Huge advantage of roof trusses is, though, you can span super long distances and you don't have to have load-bearing walls in the middle. There's some roof trusses you have to, but generally like a hip type roof or something like that, a more generalized roof like on most of our drawings, all the interior walls on the second floor are non-load bearing. So that's a big advantage compared to having ceiling joists with a cut roof and massive rafters, and then they're still not long enough to easily span some of the distances of our big houses that we tend to build today. So keep that in mind, and again, this is well discussed in that lecture there, so that will help with that. One more thing, so we've got I touched briefly on maybe 6, but just make sure you've watched the video on that, and that'll probably be enough for you on that. Except for 6C. 6C is reading drawings for constructability. I just take the 5C one a bit further. I use the details, some of them from chapter 4, and I go into detail about what you're looking at, and we look at the comparison to what we looked at in 5C. So that brings that better visualization of everything home, of how we construct things. And then I use the Brook drawings as example. I go through the details on the Brook drawings and the reference points from the Brook drawings, just to get you better on that. You know, if you can read the Brook drawings pretty well, I think you're getting pretty good at looking at a residential building. Doncaster and Whittington are probably a little bit easy, but the Brook, also because it's imperial, but also because it's a production home and there's different ones and you have to figure out what you're looking at. that's helpful, I think, learning on that. So I think that's more or less the areas that I wanted to cover. And so as I mentioned, you will write the test at your normal time that we usually run our course, which is 9 to 11 on Monday. And I mentioned the date because I can't remember it anymore. Monday, November 2nd. I will have a practice review test, which is really just your quiz questions, but that would be a good way to reinforce things coming through. Make sure that if it's not too late, you've got time, do a bit every day, try to catch up on the video lectures if you've missed a bunch of them. And because otherwise you might have holes in your learning, and then that's, even if you do well on the test somehow because you're able to quickly look things up, I don't think it'll stick very well. And so then what happens is over time, your next semester you get estimating, or the semester after that, you got to estimate a residential structure. I don't know what this is. I don't know what that is. I don't know what this is. And I used to get sometimes students, they say, you never showed us this. I had one student one year came up to me in the cafeteria and he said, you never showed us how to deal, this was in a different course, how to deal with subcontractors last year. I was on site and I had one heck of a time dealing with why did you not show us how? And I happened to have my laptop in my arm and I opened it and I said, you see this lecture? What's it called? Dealing with subcontractors. I go, where were you, right? It's going to be, where were you? If you didn't go through the material, there's holes and they tend to build over time. The advantage of being online though, you can catch up if there were certain circumstances in your life that prevented you from being able to do that, be it work, be it life circumstances, you can still catch up. So it's not too late. There's those opportunities. So something that some of you may think is a disadvantage, I think it can be a big advantage to a lot of people if it's used right. So I'm wishing everybody the best of luck, and not that you need it. I'm just preparing for the midterm, and so good luck with that, and we'll see how it goes. Okay? So have a good week, and spread it out, and don't leave it all till the end. Spread it out. Spread it out. Bye. Tom Stevenson signing off, and bye for now.